She noticed patients going in for simple procedures and never coming out the same. When Dr. Martinez investigated, she uncovered a nightmare. The hospital was secretly harvesting organs from living patients and selling them on the black market. The most terrifying part, she was scheduled for routine surgery the next morning. Welcome to a medical thriller so terrifying it will make you question every hospital visit you've ever had. Before we dive into this spine-chilling story of betrayal and survival, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if stories that expose hidden horrors fascinate you, hit that subscribe button because this one will leave you speechless. Mercy General Hospital gleamed like a beacon of hope in downtown Phoenix, its glass towers reflecting the desert sun and projecting an image of cutting-edge medical excellence. For Rebecca Martinez, walking through its pristine corridors for the first time as head of cardiothoracic surgery felt like a dream come true. At 34, Rebecca had earned her position through years of dedication, countless hours in operating rooms, and a reputation for saving patients that other surgeons had given up on. The offer from Mercy General had been unexpected but irresistible: a substantial salary increase, state-of-the-art equipment, and the chance to work with some of the most respected names in medicine. Dr. Martinez, welcome to Mercy General, said Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the hospital's chief of staff, as she led Rebecca through the surgical wing. I trust you'll find our facilities more than adequate for your needs. Dr. Hawthorne was an elegant woman in her late 50s with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and the kind of authoritative presence that commanded respect from everyone in the hospital. She had personally recruited Rebecca, flying to Houston to offer her the position during what Rebecca thought was a routine medical conference. The facilities are impressive, Rebecca replied, studying the advanced surgical suites that lined the corridor. I've never seen equipment this sophisticated outside of university hospitals. We believe in providing our surgical staff with the best possible tools. After all, our patients deserve nothing less than perfection. As they walked, Rebecca noticed something unusual about the hospital's design. Unlike most medical facilities, Mercy General seemed to have an excessive number of surgical suites, at least twice as many as a hospital this size would typically need. Do you perform a high volume of surgeries here? Rebecca asked. Dr. Hawthorne's smile was practiced and revealing nothing. We serve a very selective clientele, Dr. Martinez. Many of our patients come to us specifically for procedures they can't obtain elsewhere. Rebecca assumed she was referring to complex cases that required specialized expertise. It wasn't unusual for prestigious hospitals to attract patients from around the world seeking the best possible care. I'm looking forward to meeting the surgical team, Rebecca said as they approached the main operating theater. Ah, perfect timing, Dr. Hawthorne replied. Dr. Chen is just finishing up a procedure. Through the observation window, Rebecca watched Dr. Michael Chen, a renowned cardiovascular surgeon, completing what appeared to be a routine cardiac bypass. The patient was an elderly man, and the surgery seemed to be proceeding normally. Dr. Chen has been with us for 8 years, Dr. Hawthorne explained. He's one of our most dedicated surgeons. Rebecca studied Dr. Chen's technique, which was flawless. His movements were precise, confident, and efficient, but something about the surgical team's behavior struck her as odd. They seemed unusually focused, almost secretive in their interaction. The patient appears to be in excellent condition, Rebecca observed. Mr. Patterson, yes. A routine procedure for us. He'll make a full recovery. As they moved away from the observation window, Rebecca caught a glimpse of the surgical schedule posted on the wall. It was packed with procedures, many scheduled for odd hours, late nights, early mornings, weekends. For a hospital that supposedly served a selective clientele, Mercy General seemed to operate around the clock. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Hawthorne said as they entered her office, there are a few administrative matters we need to discuss before you begin your first surgery tomorrow. The office was spacious and elegantly appointed, with medical degrees and awards covering the walls. But what caught Rebecca's attention was a photograph on Dr. Hawthorne's desk, a group of surgeons standing in front of what appeared to be a private jet. Is that a medical transport plane? Rebecca asked. We occasionally arrange special transportation for unique cases. Our patient base includes some very prominent individuals who value privacy above all else. Dr. Hawthorne handed Rebecca a thick folder labeled Confidential Protocols. These are our special procedures for VIP patients. I need you to review them carefully and sign the confidentiality agreements. Rebecca flipped through the documents, which contained detailed protocols for patient privacy, information security, and something called enhanced surgical procedures. The language was clinical but vague, describing techniques that seemed to go beyond standard medical practice. Enhanced surgical procedures, Rebecca asked. Some of our patients require modifications to standard surgical protocols. You'll learn more about these as you gain experience with our particular patient population. Something about Dr. Hawthorne's tone made Rebecca uneasy, but she attributed her discomfort to first-day nerves. Every hospital had its own procedures and protocols. Dr. Martinez, I should mention that we have a very strict policy regarding patient information. Nothing that happens within these walls should ever be discussed outside the hospital. Our patients pay premium prices for absolute discretion. Rebecca nodded, understanding the importance of patient confidentiality. Of course, that's standard practice. Good. Your first surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. A routine cardiac valve replacement on a patient named David Thompson. Dr. Chen will assist you and you'll have our most experienced surgical team. As Rebecca left Dr. Hawthorne's office, she felt a mixture of excitement and unease. The hospital was clearly prestigious and well-funded, but there was something about the atmosphere that felt. The staff members she passed in the corridors were polite but seemed guarded, and she noticed that many conversations stopped when she approached. That evening, Rebecca reviewed the patient file for David Thompson. On paper, it appeared to be a straightforward case. A 58-year-old businessman with a damaged heart valve that required replacement. His medical history was unremarkable, and his insurance information indicated he was wealthy enough to afford the best possible care. But as Rebecca studied the file more carefully, she noticed some irregularities. The patient's blood work showed some unusual markers, and his cardiac imaging seemed to indicate more extensive damage than would typically require just a valve replacement. Probably just thorough testing, Rebecca told herself as she prepared for bed. This hospital clearly doesn't cut corners on diagnostics. What Rebecca didn't know was that in a secure office 3 floors below her apartment, Dr. Hawthorne was reviewing a very different file. One that contained detailed information about Rebecca's own medical history, blood type, organ compatibility, and genetic markers. Perfect match, Dr. Hawthorne said to Dr. Chen, who sat across from her desk. Dr. Martinez has exactly what we need for the Singapore client. When do we schedule her procedure? Dr. Chen asked. Give her a few weeks to settle in, perform a few routine surgeries, build trust. We want her completely comfortable before we make our move. Dr. Hawthorne closed Rebecca's file and locked it in a safe that contained similar files for dozens of other doctors, nurses, and medical professionals who had been recruited to Mercy General under false pretenses. Dr. Martinez thinks she's here to save lives, Dr. Hawthorne said with a cold smile. She has no idea she's here to donate hers. As Rebecca slept peacefully in her hospital-provided apartment, completely unaware of the conspiracy surrounding her, the real business of Mercy General continued in the basement levels that didn't appear on any public hospital plans. In surgical suites hidden beneath the legitimate hospital, other operations were taking place. Procedures that involved healthy patients going to sleep and waking up missing kidneys, portions of liver, even corneas. These weren't medical emergencies or life-saving surgeries. They were harvesting operations, conducted with the same precision and skill that Rebecca admired in Dr. Chen's technique. The patients were carefully selected, travelers with no local connections, homeless individuals who wouldn't be missed, and increasingly medical professionals who had been recruited for their organs rather than their skills. Tomorrow, Rebecca would perform her first surgery at Mercy General, completely unaware that she was working in the most sophisticated organ trafficking operation in the country. And in a few weeks, when Dr. Hawthorne decided the time was right, Rebecca would become a patient herself. But unlike the surgeries she would perform to save lives, Rebecca's procedure would be designed to take her life, one organ at a time. Rebecca arrived at Mercy General at 5:30 a.m., giving herself extra time to familiarize herself with the surgical equipment and meet her team. The pre-dawn corridors were bustling with activity, more activity than she would have expected for such an early hour. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Chen greeted her as she entered the surgical prep area. Ready for your first day? Absolutely. I've reviewed Mr. Thompson's file. The valve replacement should be straightforward. Dr. Chen's expression was pleasant but unreadable. Yes. Straightforward. Though we may discover some complications once we open him up. Our imaging sometimes reveals more than the initial scans suggest. Rebecca was accustomed to surgical surprises. The human body often presented unexpected challenges during procedures. I'm prepared for complications. Better to be thorough than to miss something critical. Exactly our philosophy, Dr. Chen replied. Patient safety is our absolute priority. As Rebecca scrubbed in, she noticed the surgical team assembling for Mr. Thompson's procedure. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Sarah Kim, was someone Rebecca didn't recognize from her research on the hospital staff. The surgical nurses, Janet and Maria, seemed experienced but unusually quiet. Large team for a valve replacement, Rebecca observed. Dr. Hawthorne believes in thorough preparation. Dr. Chen explained, we often have additional staff on hand in case we need to expand the scope of the procedure. Rebecca entered operating room 3 to find David Thompson already prepped and under anesthesia. He appeared exactly as his file had described, a middle-aged businessman in good health aside from his cardiac issue. Patient is stable and ready for procedure, Dr. Kim announced from the anesthesia station. Rebecca began the surgery with a standard cardiac approach, making precise incisions to access Mr. Thompson's heart. What she found when she examined the cardiac structures was puzzling. The valve damage was less severe than the imaging had suggested. Dr. Chen, take a look at this, Rebecca said, pointing to the patient's heart with her surgical probe. The valve shows wear, but it's not severe enough to require replacement. This patient could probably be managed with medication for several more years. Dr. Chen moved closer, studying the cardiac structures. Interesting. But since we have him open, perhaps we should proceed with the replacement anyway. Preventive surgery. Rebecca frowned. Unnecessary surgery went against every principle of medical ethics she had been taught. Dr. Chen, this patient doesn't need cardiac surgery. The risk of operating when it's not necessary outweighs any potential benefit. Dr. Martinez. Dr. Chen's voice carried a subtle edge. I think you'll find that our protocols here are somewhat different from what you may be accustomed to. Sometimes we perform procedures that seem unnecessary but serve other purposes. What other purposes? Before Dr. Chen could answer, Dr. Kim called out from the anesthesia station. Dr. Martinez, patient is showing some irregularities. I recommend we proceed quickly with whatever procedure we're planning. Rebecca looked at the monitors, which showed Mr. Thompson's vital signs as completely normal. Dr. Kim, the patient appears stable. What irregularities are you seeing? Internal monitoring is showing some concerning patterns. We should complete the surgery and close as quickly as possible. Rebecca had performed hundreds of cardiac surgeries and she knew normal vital signs when she saw them. Either Dr. Kim was inexperienced or she was lying about Mr. Thompson's condition. I'm not comfortable proceeding with unnecessary surgery, Rebecca announced. This patient's heart is healthy enough that surgical intervention isn't warranted. The operating room fell silent except for the beeping of monitors. Rebecca could sense tension among the surgical team that went beyond normal procedural disagreements. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Chen said carefully, perhaps we should continue this discussion after we close the patient. For now, let's complete the procedure as scheduled. There is no procedure to complete. This patient doesn't need surgery. Actually, a new voice said from the OR entrance, this patient needs more than surgery. Rebecca turned to see Dr. Hawthorne entering the operating room, which was highly unusual. Hospital administrators rarely observed routine surgeries. Dr. Hawthorne, I've examined the patient's heart and the valve replacement isn't necessary. I recommend we close and manage his condition medically. Dr. Hawthorne approached the surgical table, studying the open chest cavity. Dr. Martinez, I appreciate your thoroughness, but this procedure isn't just about Mr. Thompson's heart. What do you mean? Mr. Thompson has been selected for our enhanced protocol. In addition to addressing his cardiac issues, we'll be harvesting his kidney, portions of his liver, and his corneas. Rebecca stared at Dr. Hawthorne in shock. Harvesting organs? This patient is alive and healthy. That's not medical treatment, that's business, Dr. Hawthorne said calmly. Mr. Thompson's organs are worth approximately $2.3 million on the international market. His death will be attributed to surgical complications during what appeared to be routine cardiac surgery. Rebecca felt like the world had tilted on its axis. You're talking about murder. This is a living patient, not a donor. Dr. Martinez, every year thousands of people die waiting for organ transplants while perfectly good organs go to waste in people who don't really need them. We're simply redistributing biological resources to where they can do the most good. You mean where they can make the most money? Dr. Hawthorne smiled coldly. Money allows us to save lives, Dr. Martinez. The organs we harvest from Mr. Thompson will save 4 people who can afford to pay for them. It's a net positive for society. Rebecca looked around the operating room at colleagues she had thought were medical professionals. Now she realized they were criminals participating in organized murder. I won't do it, Rebecca said firmly. I won't kill a patient for money. Dr. Martinez, I'm afraid you don't understand your position here. You're not just a surgeon at this hospital. You're an investment. We've spent considerable resources recruiting you, studying your medical background and preparing for your arrival. What are you talking about? Dr. Hawthorne produced a tablet and showed Rebecca a detailed medical file, her own medical file, containing information that should have been private and confidential. Your blood type, tissue compatibility, genetic markers and organ quality assessments. Dr. Martinez, you weren't hired to perform surgeries. You were recruited to provide organs. Your cardiac surgery skills just make you a valuable bonus until we harvest your organs for our clients. Rebecca felt sick. You're insane. I'm practical. Your heart alone is worth $1.8 million to a client in Dubai. Your kidneys, liver segments, and corneas will bring the total value of your organs to over $4 million. I'll expose you. I'll call the police, the FBI, the medical board. Dr. Hawthorne laughed. Dr. Martinez, look around this operating room. Every person here participates in our program. Dr. Chen has harvested organs from over 200 patients. Dr. Kim ensures they never wake up. Even the nurses help dispose of the evidence. Rebecca realized she was surrounded by killers posing as medical professionals. Besides, Dr. Hawthorne continued, you're scheduled for routine surgery yourself tomorrow morning. A simple procedure to remove what we'll claim is a suspicious cardiac mass. You'll go to sleep as Dr. Rebecca Martinez, respected surgeon. You'll wake up as spare parts for people wealthy enough to afford them. Rebecca knew she had to get out of the operating room, out of the hospital, and to authorities who could stop this nightmare. But first, she had to save Mr. Thompson. What about this patient? She asked. Mr. Thompson will receive his enhanced protocol as planned. Dr. Chen will complete the procedure after you're reassigned to other duties. Security guards appeared at the OR entrance, large men who clearly weren't hospital personnel. Dr. Martinez, please come with us. Dr. Hawthorne said, you need some time to rest before tomorrow's procedure. As the guards approached, Rebecca made a decision that would either save her life or end it. She grabbed a surgical scalpel and held it against Mr. Thompson's throat. Nobody moves, or I kill the patient and destroy millions of dollars worth of organs. The operating room froze. Dr. Hawthorne's calm demeanor cracked for the first time. Dr. Martinez, put down the scalpel. You're a doctor. You took an oath to do no harm. You mean the oath that you and everyone in this room have violated by murdering patients for money? Rebecca knew she had only seconds before the guards overpowered her. She needed to find a way to escape, save Mr. Thompson, and expose the conspiracy that had turned a hospital into a slaughterhouse. But surrounded by killers and with her own execution scheduled for the next morning, Rebecca's options were running out quickly. Rebecca held the scalpel steady, knowing she had only moments before the security guards would risk Mr. Thompson's organs to stop her. Her mind raced through escape scenarios as she studied the faces surrounding her, colleagues who had revealed themselves as murderers. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Hawthorne said slowly, I understand you're upset. This is a lot to process. But think about what you're doing. Mr. Thompson is innocent in all of this. Exactly, Rebecca replied. He's innocent and you were about to butcher him for spare parts. We were about to save 4 lives with his organs. Sometimes difficult decisions are necessary for the greater good. The greater good? You mean the greater profit? Dr. Chen stepped forward slightly. Dr. Martinez, I know this seems wrong, but you have to understand, we save more lives than we take. The organs we harvest go to patients who would die without them. Patients who can afford to pay millions for black market organs while poor patients die on waiting lists. The world isn't fair, Dr. Hawthorne said coldly. We work within the reality we have. Rebecca noticed one of the security guards moving closer to the surgical table. She pressed the scalpel against Mr. Thompson's neck, drawing a thin line of blood. I said nobody moves. The guard stopped, but Rebecca knew her leverage was temporary. Eventually they would call her bluff, and she would have to choose between killing an innocent man or allowing herself to be captured. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Kim said from the anesthesia station, the patient's vitals are dropping. The stress you're causing is affecting his cardiovascular system. Rebecca glanced at the monitors, which showed Mr. Thompson's heart rate and blood pressure fluctuating. Whether Dr. Kim was telling the truth or manipulating the readouts, Rebecca couldn't risk causing harm to the patient she was trying to save. "Wake him up," Rebecca demanded. "Bring him out of anesthesia now." "That's not medically advisable," Dr. Kim replied. "Wake him up or I'll make sure none of his organs are viable for transplant." Dr. Kim looked to Dr. Hawthorne, who nodded reluctantly. "Do it, reverse the anesthesia." As Dr. Kim administered drugs to wake Mr. Thompson, Rebecca planned her next move. If she could get the patient conscious and mobile, they might have a chance to escape together. "Dr. Martinez," Dr. Hawthorne said, "even if you wake the patient, where do you think you'll go? This entire hospital is our operation. Every exit is monitored, every staff member is either complicit or controlled. Then I'll call the police. Dr. Martinez, half the police force in this city receives medical care through our alternative payment system. The other half are too well paid to ask questions about our operations." Rebecca felt a chill as she realized the scope of the conspiracy she had uncovered. This wasn't just a rogue surgical team. It was an organized network that had corrupted law enforcement, medical professionals, and probably city officials. Mr. Thompson began to stir as the anesthesia wore off. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused. "Mr. Thompson," Rebecca said loudly, "you need to listen to me carefully. You're in danger. These people want to kill you." Mr. Thompson tried to speak but could only make confused noises as he struggled to fully regain consciousness. "Dr. Martinez," Dr. Hawthorne said, "you're traumatizing the patient. This is cruel and unnecessary. What's cruel is murdering people for their organs." As Mr. Thompson became more alert, Rebecca helped him sit up on the surgical table. His chest incision was still open, but she could close it quickly if they had time to escape. "Can you walk?" Rebecca asked him. Mr. Thompson nodded weakly, though he was clearly disoriented and in pain. "We're going to leave together," Rebecca told him. "Stay close to me and do exactly what I say." Rebecca moved toward the OR exit, keeping the scalpel visible as a threat. The security guards tracked her movement but maintained their distance. "Dr. Martinez," Dr. Hawthorne called as Rebecca reached the door, "there's something you should see before you make any more rash decisions." "What?" "The basement levels of this hospital. I think you'll find them educational." Despite every instinct telling her to run, Rebecca was curious about what Dr. Hawthorne wanted to show her. The basement levels might contain evidence she could use to expose the organ trafficking operation. "Show me," Rebecca said. "But Mr. Thompson comes with us." Dr. Hawthorne nodded to the security guards who formed a protective escort around Rebecca and Mr. Thompson as they left the operating room. As they walked through the hospital corridors, Rebecca noticed details she had missed during her initial tour: security cameras in every hallway, card readers on doors that should have been open, and staff members who watched her passage with expressions of concern rather than curiosity. They took an elevator to sublevel 3, a floor that hadn't been mentioned during Rebecca's orientation. When the doors opened, Rebecca found herself in a medical facility that looked more like a factory than a hospital. The basement level contained dozens of surgical suites, each one occupied with procedures that Rebecca immediately recognized as organ harvesting operations. Patients lay on tables while surgical teams methodically removed kidneys, liver segments, corneas, and other organs. The patients appeared to be under anesthesia, but Rebecca noticed that none of them had the monitoring equipment that would be standard for legitimate surgery. "What is this place?" Rebecca whispered. "This is where we conduct our primary business," Dr. Hawthorne explained. "The hospital upstairs is mostly for show, legitimate medical procedures that provide cover for our real operations." Rebecca counted at least 20 surgical tables, all occupied with patients in various stages of organ removal. The surgical teams worked with mechanical efficiency, clearly having performed these procedures countless times. "How many people have you murdered?" Rebecca asked. "We prefer to think of it as resource reallocation. Most of these patients were going to die anyway: homeless individuals, drug addicts, people with terminal illnesses. We simply accelerated their timeline while making their deaths meaningful." "Meaningful? You're stealing their organs for profit." "We're saving the lives of people who matter, successful individuals who contribute to society and can afford to pay for the privilege of continued life." Rebecca looked more closely at the patients on the surgical tables and felt her stomach turn. Many of them appeared young and healthy, not terminally ill as Dr. Hawthorne claimed. Some even looked like medical professionals, doctors and nurses who might have been recruited the same way Rebecca had been. Dr. Hawthorne, one of the surgical teams, called out, "We need consultation on table 7. The patient is showing signs of consciousness." Rebecca followed Dr. Hawthorne to table 7, where a young woman who appeared to be in her 20s was stirring during what looked like a kidney removal procedure. "Increase the anesthesia," Dr. Hawthorne instructed the anesthesiologist. "We're already at maximum dosage. Any more and we risk organ damage." Dr. Hawthorne considered this for a moment and picked up a syringe from the surgical tray. "Then we'll complete the procedure quickly." Rebecca watched in horror as Dr. Hawthorne injected something directly into the patient's IV line. The young woman's movements stopped immediately, and her vital signs flatlined. "What did you give her?" Rebecca demanded. "Something to ensure she doesn't experience any more discomfort. The organs are what matter now." Rebecca realized she was witnessing not just organ trafficking, but systematic murder on an industrial scale. This facility was processing dozens of victims every day, turning human beings into spare parts for wealthy clients. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered to the patient beside her, "we need to get out of here. Now." But when she turned around, Mr. Thompson was gone. Security guards had quietly separated him from her while she was distracted by the horror unfolding around them. "Where is he?" Rebecca demanded. "Mr. Thompson is being prepared for his enhanced protocol," Dr. Hawthorne replied calmly. "His organs are scheduled for transport to Singapore this evening." Rebecca was alone, surrounded by killers in a basement facility where dozens of people were being murdered every day. Her own execution was scheduled for the next morning, and now she had seen evidence of crimes that went far beyond what she had initially imagined. "Dr. Martinez," Dr. Hawthorne said, "I hope this helps you understand the scope of our operation and the futility of resistance. Tomorrow morning you'll take your place on one of these tables and your organs will save the lives of 4 very deserving patients." As security guards moved to escort Rebecca back to the upper levels, she realized that exposing this conspiracy would require more than just calling the police. She needed to find a way to document the evidence, contact federal authorities, and somehow stay alive long enough to ensure that justice was served. But surrounded by killers in a facility designed for murder, Rebecca's chances of survival were diminishing rapidly. Rebecca was escorted to a secure room on the hospital's 2nd floor, a patient room that had been converted into a holding cell with reinforced locks and no access to communication devices. As the guards locked her inside, Dr. Hawthorne delivered her final instructions. "Dr. Martinez, your surgery is scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow. I recommend you get some rest. The harvesting procedure is quite stressful, even under anesthesia." "People will look for me," Rebecca said. "I have colleagues, family members who will notice when I disappear." "Dr. Martinez, you relocated here from Houston, with no family in the area. Your colleagues from your previous hospital believe you're happily settled in your new position. As far as anyone knows, you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Dr. Hawthorne was right. Rebecca had moved to Phoenix specifically for this job, leaving behind the few personal relationships she had maintained. Her dedication to her surgical career had left her isolated and vulnerable. "Besides," Dr. Hawthorne continued, "your death will be attributed to a tragic surgical complication. These things happen, unfortunately. You'll be remembered as a dedicated surgeon who died too young." After Dr. Hawthorne left, Rebecca examined her prison. The room was a standard hospital patient room with one critical modification. The windows had been replaced with bulletproof glass, and the door had been reinforced with steel plating. But it was still a hospital room, which meant it had to have certain standard features. Rebecca found what she was looking for in the bathroom, a maintenance panel that provided access to the building's utility systems. If she could access the ventilation system, she might be able to move through the building without being detected by security. Using a metal towel bar that she managed to pry from the wall, Rebecca worked to remove the screws holding the maintenance panel in place. The work was slow and difficult, but after an hour she had created an opening large enough to crawl through. The ventilation shaft was cramped and dusty, but it connected to other parts of the building. Rebecca crawled through the darkness, following the ductwork toward what she hoped was the main hospital communication center. Her plan was simple but dangerous: document the organ trafficking operation, contact federal authorities, and try to save as many victims as possible before her own execution. But first she needed to find evidence that couldn't be dismissed or covered up. After 30 minutes of crawling through ventilation shafts, Rebecca found an access panel that opened into an office she didn't recognize. She dropped down into the room and quickly assessed her surroundings. The office belonged to Dr. Hawthorne and contained exactly what Rebecca needed: computer access, filing cabinets full of documents, and most importantly, a secure phone line that might not be monitored by hospital security. Rebecca began downloading files from Dr. Hawthorne's computer, copying financial records, patient lists, and surgical schedules that documented the scope of the organ trafficking operation. What she discovered was even more horrifying than she had imagined. The files showed that Mercy General had been operating as an organ trafficking facility for over 8 years, processing more than 3,000 victims during that time. The operation generated over $50 million annually and supplied organs to wealthy clients in dozens of countries. But most shocking were the recruitment files, detailed dossiers on medical professionals who had been lured to the hospital under false pretenses, then murdered for their organs. Rebecca's own file was there, showing that she had been targeted and studied for over a year before being recruited. Rebecca copied everything she could find to a portable drive, then used the secure phone to call the FBI field office in Phoenix. FBI, Agent Morrison speaking. Agent Morrison, this is Dr. Rebecca Martinez. I'm calling to report a massive organ trafficking operation at Mercy General Hospital in Phoenix. Dr. Martinez, this is a very serious allegation. What evidence do you have? I'm currently in the hospital and I've witnessed multiple murder for organ procedures. I have computer files documenting thousands of victims and millions of dollars in illegal transactions. Dr. Martinez, are you in immediate danger? Yes, they plan to kill me tomorrow morning and harvest my organs. I've escaped from custody, but security is looking for me. Can you get out of the hospital safely? Rebecca checked the office door and saw security guards patrolling the hallway. I don't think so. The entire hospital is compromised. Even the police may be involved. Dr. Martinez, I need you to stay on the line while I coordinate with federal agents in your area. We can have a tactical team at the hospital within an hour. Agent Morrison, there are dozens of patients being murdered in the basement levels right now. Every minute we wait, more people die. I understand federal agents are already en route. In the meantime, I need you to stay hidden and avoid confrontation with hospital security. Rebecca heard footsteps in the hallway outside Dr. Hawthorne's office. Her escape had been discovered, and security was conducting a room-by-room search. Agent Morrison, they're searching for me. I need to move. Dr. Martinez, stay on the line if possible. We're tracking your location through the phone signal. Rebecca pocketed the evidence files and climbed back into the ventilation system, pulling the access panel closed behind her just as security guards entered Dr. Hawthorne's office. She could hear them discovering that the computer had been accessed and files had been copied. She's been here, one of the guards said. Alert Dr. Hawthorne. The surgeon has evidence of our operations. Rebecca crawled through the ventilation shafts toward the basement levels, knowing that she needed to document the organ harvesting facility before federal agents arrived. Without photographic evidence of the murders in progress, Hawthorne might be able to clean up the operation and eliminate evidence before authorities could investigate. But reaching the basement would require her to pass through areas of the hospital where security was actively searching for her, and once she was found, Rebecca knew that her scheduled execution would be moved up significantly. With federal agents en route but still at least an hour away, Rebecca had to survive long enough to provide evidence that would expose the most sophisticated organ trafficking operation in U.S. history. The lives of dozens of current victims, and potentially thousands of future victims, depended on her staying alive and undiscovered for just a little longer. Rebecca reached the basement level through the ventilation system and found an access panel that opened into a supply closet adjacent to the organ harvesting facility. Through the closet door, she could hear the sounds of multiple surgical procedures, the beeping of monitors, the hiss of ventilators, and the clinical conversations of surgical teams methodically removing organs from living patients. Using her phone's camera, Rebecca began documenting the horrors she witnessed through the partially opened closet door. The basement facility was operating at full capacity, with 20 surgical tables occupied by victims in various stages of organ removal. She photographed the surgical schedules posted on the walls, which showed the names of victims, their organ compatibility information, and the clients who had purchased their organs. The level of organization was staggering. This was a medical facility that had been purpose-built for mass murder. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Morrison, Federal Team ETA 20 minutes. Maintain position and avoid detection. 20 minutes felt like an eternity when surrounded by killers, but Rebecca knew the evidence she was gathering would be crucial for prosecuting everyone involved in the conspiracy. As she continued photographing, Rebecca heard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Dr. Chen, what's the status on the Martinez situation?" Dr. Hawthorne's voice was clearly audible from the main surgical floor. "Security is conducting a systematic search. She can't have gone far. She's seen too much. We need to accelerate her harvesting schedule." "What about the Singapore client?" "They're expecting her heart tomorrow. Contact them and explain that we're moving up the timeline. Dr. Martinez's heart needs to be harvested within the next 2 hours to maintain viability." Rebecca felt her pulse racing as she realized her execution had been moved up to immediate. She had less than 2 hours to survive until federal agents arrived. "What about the evidence she may have gathered?" Dr. Chen asked. "We'll find her computer files and destroy them. As for witnesses, there won't be any. Dr. Martinez will suffer a tragic accident during her attempted escape." Rebecca knew she needed to move. The supply closet would be searched soon, and her hiding place would be discovered. But as she prepared to climb back into the ventilation system, she heard something that stopped her cold. "Bring up Mr. Thompson from holding," Dr. Hawthorne instructed. "If we're accelerating the Martinez timeline, we might as well complete his procedure simultaneously. 2 harvesting operations will maximize our efficiency." Rebecca realized that Mr. Thompson, the patient she had tried to save in the operating room, was still alive and about to be murdered. She couldn't escape and leave him to die, but attempting a rescue would almost certainly result in her own capture. Through the crack in the closet door, Rebecca watched as security guards wheeled Mr. Thompson into the harvesting facility on a gurney. He was conscious but clearly sedated, his eyes unfocused and his movements sluggish. "Prep him for the full protocol," Dr. Hawthorne instructed the surgical team. "Heart, kidneys, liver segments, corneas, and tissue samples. We have multiple clients waiting." Rebecca made a decision that went against every survival instinct she possessed. She couldn't let Mr. Thompson be murdered while she hid in a closet. Whatever happened next, she was going to try to save him. She quietly opened the closet door and assessed the layout of the harvesting facility. Mr. Thompson was being positioned on a surgical table about 30 feet from her location. Between her and the table were several surgical teams, security guards, and Dr. Hawthorne herself. Rebecca's phone buzzed again. "Federal team ETA 15 minutes. Stay hidden." 15 minutes was too long. Mr. Thompson would be dead in 5 minutes if she didn't act. Rebecca spotted something that gave her an idea: the facility's fire suppression system. If she could trigger the fire alarms, it would create chaos and confusion that might allow her to reach Mr. Thompson. She found the fire alarm panel near the supply closet and pulled the emergency lever. Immediately, sirens began blaring throughout the basement facility, and emergency lights started flashing. "False alarm," Dr. Hawthorne called out over the noise. "Continue with procedures." "Security, check the alarm system." But the fire suppression protocol had already been triggered. Sprinkler systems activated throughout the basement, soaking the surgical equipment and creating exactly the chaos Rebecca had hoped for. In the confusion, Rebecca ran toward Mr. Thompson's table. Several surgical team members were trying to protect their equipment from the water, while others evacuated sensitive materials. "Mr. Thompson," Rebecca called as she reached his table. "We're getting out of here." Mr. Thompson looked at her with confused recognition. "Doctor, what's happening?" "You're being rescued. Can you walk?" "I think so." Rebecca helped Mr. Thompson off the surgical table and began moving toward the facility's emergency exit. The fire alarm had triggered automatic door locks to release, giving them access to routes that would normally require security clearance. "Stop them!" Dr. Hawthorne shouted over the alarm noise. Security guards began converging on Rebecca and Mr. Thompson's position, but the wet floors and flashing emergency lights made movement treacherous for everyone. Rebecca and Mr. Thompson reached the emergency stairwell that led to the hospital's main level. As they climbed, Rebecca could hear security guards behind them, but the head start provided by the fire alarm confusion had given them a crucial advantage. "Dr. Martinez," Mr. Thompson said as they climbed, "what's really happening here? Why were they going to operate on me when you said I didn't need surgery?" "Mr. Thompson, this hospital is a front for an organ trafficking operation. They were planning to kill you and sell your organs." "That's impossible. This is a respected medical facility." "I know how it sounds, but I've seen the evidence. They've murdered thousands of people. They reached the main hospital level and found chaos there as well. The fire alarm had triggered evacuation protocols throughout the building, with staff and patients being moved to safety areas. Rebecca spotted federal agents entering through the main entrance, agents wearing FBI tactical gear and moving with the purposeful efficiency of a coordinated raid. "Agent Morrison," Rebecca called out, approaching the lead agent. "Dr. Martinez? Are you the caller who reported organ trafficking?" "Yes. The harvesting facility is in the basement levels. There are dozens of victims being operated on right now. We have teams moving to secure all levels of the building. Are you injured?" "I'm fine, but Mr. Thompson here was scheduled to be murdered. There are other patients in immediate danger." Agent Morrison spoke into his radio. "All teams, priority is basement levels. We have active organ harvesting operations in progress. Medical personnel needed for victim assistance." As federal agents secured the hospital, Rebecca watched Dr. Hawthorne being led away in handcuffs. The woman who had orchestrated thousands of murders looked smaller and less intimidating now that her conspiracy had been exposed. Dr. Chen, Dr. Kim, and at least 30 other staff members were also arrested as agents discovered the scope of the organ trafficking operation. The basement facility was shut down, and the surviving victims were provided emergency medical care. "Dr. Martinez," Agent Morrison said as the initial chaos subsided, "the evidence you gathered will be crucial for prosecuting this case. What you uncovered here may be the largest organ trafficking operation ever discovered in the United States." "How many victims?" Rebecca asked. "Based on the files you copied, we estimate over 3,000 people were murdered here over 8 years. Your actions tonight saved dozens of lives and prevented thousands of future murders." As Rebecca sat in the hospital lobby giving her statement to federal agents, she reflected on how close she had come to becoming a victim herself. Her medical skills had made her valuable to the conspiracy, but those same skills had also enabled her to recognize the horror and fight back. Mr. Thompson approached her as she finished her statement. "Dr. Martinez, I want to thank you for saving my life. I know you risked everything to protect me." "Mr. Thompson, I took an oath to do no harm. That includes stopping other people from doing harm when I have the power to prevent it." 6 months later, Rebecca sat in a federal courthouse as the final verdicts were read in what had become known as the Mercy General murder trial. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, Dr. Michael Chen, Sarah Kim, and 27 other defendants faced sentences ranging from life in prison to death penalty for their roles in the organ trafficking conspiracy. The defendants' crimes represent a systematic betrayal of medical ethics and human dignity, the judge said as he delivered the sentences. The court finds that their actions constitute crimes against humanity and warrant the maximum penalties available under law. Dr. Hawthorne received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dr. Chen and Dr. Kim received death sentences. The other defendants received sentences ranging from 25 years to life, depending on their level of involvement in the murder. Rebecca had testified for 3 days during the trial, describing her recruitment, her discovery of the organ trafficking operation, and her escape. Her testimony, combined with the evidence she had gathered, had been crucial in securing convictions for all defendants. The prosecution estimates that over 3,200 people were murdered at Mercy General Hospital over an 8-year period, the prosecuting attorney said in his closing statement. This facility operated as a medical slaughterhouse, turning human beings into spare parts for wealthy clients around the world. The investigation had revealed that the organ trafficking network extended far beyond Mercy General Hospital. Similar operations were discovered in 7 other cities, and international authorities were investigating connections to organ trafficking rings in dozens of countries. Dr. Martinez, Agent Morrison said as they left the courthouse, "Your courage in exposing this conspiracy has led to the largest organ trafficking prosecution in U.S. history. The network you helped uncover was responsible for murders in multiple countries." "What happens to the families of the victims?" Rebecca asked. "We've been able to identify approximately 2,800 of the victims and notify their families. Many of them never knew what happened to their loved ones. Your evidence has finally given them answers and closure." Rebecca had spent the 6 months since the raid working with federal authorities to identify victims and assist in related investigations. She had also returned to legitimate medical practice, accepting a position at a public hospital where she knew her skills would be used to save lives rather than destroy them. "Dr. Martinez," Mr. Thompson said, approaching her outside the courthouse, "I wanted to thank you again for saving my life, but I also wanted to tell you about something that's come from all of this." "What's that?" My experience has inspired me to start a foundation that provides funding for legitimate organ transplant programs. We're working to reduce the demand for black market organs by making legal transplants more accessible to people who can't afford them. Rebecca smiled. That's wonderful, Mr. Thompson. Reducing demand is the best way to prevent future organ trafficking operations. Would you consider serving on our medical advisory board? Your expertise in cardiac surgery would be invaluable. Rebecca nodded. I'd be honored to help. As Rebecca walked away from the courthouse, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a promising surgical career to the center of a criminal conspiracy and finally to a new understanding of what it meant to truly save lives. The organ trafficking network had been dismantled, but Rebecca knew that similar operations probably existed elsewhere. Her experience at Mercy General had taught her that medical facilities could be corrupted by greed and that patients were vulnerable to exploitation by the very people who were supposed to protect them. But she had also learned that one person with courage and determination could make a difference. Her decision to investigate suspicious patterns, to refuse to participate in murder, and to risk her life to save others had exposed a conspiracy that might have continued for years. 1 year after the Mercy General raid, Dr. Rebecca Martinez stood before a congressional committee investigating organ trafficking in the United States. Her testimony was being broadcast live as she described her experience and made recommendations for preventing similar conspiracies. Committee members, Rebecca said, the Mercy General case demonstrates that organ trafficking operations can hide within legitimate medical facilities. We need stronger oversight of hospitals, better tracking of organ transplant procedures, and federal legislation that makes organ trafficking a capital crime. Dr. Martinez, the committee chairman, asked, what warning signs should patients and medical professionals watch for? Patients should be suspicious of medical facilities that offer unusually expensive procedures, require extensive confidentiality agreements, or operate with unusual secrecy. Medical professionals should report any irregularities in organ procurement procedures or surgical schedules that don't align with standard medical practice. Rebecca's testimony led to new federal legislation that strengthened oversight of organ transplant programs and created severe penalties for medical professionals who participated in organ trafficking. The Martinez Act became a model for anti-trafficking legislation in other countries. After her testimony, Rebecca returned to Phoenix, where she had accepted a position as head of cardiac surgery at a public hospital that served low-income patients. Her experience at Mercy General had convinced her that medicine should be about serving those most in need rather than those most able to pay. Dr. Martinez, her surgical resident, asked as they prepared for a procedure, "How do you stay motivated working with such difficult cases?" Rebecca looked at the patient they were about to operate on, an elderly homeless man who had been brought to the emergency room with a massive heart attack. A year ago, this patient might have been targeted by organ traffickers who saw him as disposable. Now, he would receive the same quality care as any other patient. Because every life has value, Rebecca replied. Every patient deserves our best effort regardless of their ability to pay or their social status. The surgery was successful, and the patient made a full recovery. As Rebecca completed her post-operative notes, she reflected on how different her life had become since that terrifying night at Mercy General. She had received numerous awards for her courage in exposing the organ trafficking conspiracy, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom and recognition from medical organizations around the world. But the recognition that meant the most to her was the gratitude of families who finally knew what had happened to their missing loved ones. Dr. Martinez, the hospital administrator, said, approaching her in the surgical recovery area, "I have some news that I think will interest you. The FBI has arrested a group operating a similar organ trafficking network in Miami. They used your case as a model for their investigation." Rebecca felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that another criminal operation had been stopped, but sadness that such operations continued to exist. "How many victims?" she asked. "They estimate about 800 over 3 years. But because authorities knew what to look for, they were able to gather evidence and make arrests before the network could expand further." Rebecca nodded. Her nightmare at Mercy General was helping to prevent similar nightmares for other people. "There's something else," the administrator continued. "The survivors from the Miami operation want to thank you personally. Your case gave investigators the knowledge they needed to save their lives." That evening, Rebecca received a call from Agent Morrison, who had been promoted to head the FBI's organ trafficking task force. Dr. Martinez, I wanted to update you on our ongoing investigations. Based on evidence from the Mercy General case, we've identified and shut down 17 related organ trafficking operations in 12 countries. Conservative estimates suggest that your actions have prevented at least 5. Rebecca felt overwhelmed by the scope of what her courage had accomplished. Are there more operations still active? Probably, but the international attention focused on organ trafficking because of your case has made it much more difficult for these networks to operate. They can't recruit medical professionals as easily when doctors know what to watch for. After the call ended, Rebecca walked onto the hospital balcony and looked out over the city lights of Phoenix. Somewhere out there, patients were receiving legitimate medical care from doctors who had taken the same oath she had taken to do no harm. But she also knew that somewhere else, criminal organizations might still be exploiting vulnerable people and corrupting medical professionals. The fight against organ trafficking would continue, but it would be fought by people who understood the warning signs and refused to be silent when they witnessed injustice. Rebecca thought about the patients she had saved during her year at the public hospital: heart surgery patients who couldn't afford private care, emergency cases who had nowhere else to go, and people who needed a doctor willing to fight for their lives rather than profit from their deaths. This was what medicine was supposed to be about: using skills and knowledge to preserve life, relieve suffering, and give people hope for the future. The nightmare at Mercy General had shown her how medicine could be perverted by greed, but her work since then had reminded her of medicine's true purpose. As she prepared to go home, Rebecca received a text message from Mr. Thompson. Foundation has funded 500 legitimate organ transplants this year. Thank you for showing us how to save lives the right way. Rebecca smiled as she read the message. The horror of Mercy General had been transformed into something positive: legislation that protected patients, investigations that saved lives, and programs that provided legitimate alternatives to black market organ trafficking. 5 years after the Mercy General raid, Rebecca Martinez had become one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the country. But her reputation wasn't built on prestigious patients or expensive procedures. It was built on her dedication to serving those who needed help most, and her refusal to remain silent when she witnessed injustice. The hospital where she worked had become a model for ethical medical practice, with transparent procedures, strong oversight, and a commitment to serving patients regardless of their ability to pay. Rebecca's experience had shaped every aspect of how the hospital operated. Dr. Martinez, her latest surgical resident, said as they completed a complex heart surgery on a child whose family couldn't afford private care, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The stories about what happened at Mercy General, are they really true? Did doctors actually murder patients for their organs?" Rebecca had been asked this question hundreds of times over the past 5 years. The Mercy General case had become a cautionary tale taught in medical schools around the world, but some people still found it difficult to believe that medical professionals could commit such crimes. "Every word is true," Rebecca replied. "The people we trust most, doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, can be corrupted by greed just like anyone else. That's why we need oversight, transparency, and the courage to speak up when we see something wrong." How do you make sure it never happens again? By remembering that medicine is about serving patients, not profiting from them, and by teaching the next generation of doctors to value life over money. As they left the operating room, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a news alert. International Task Force reports 50% decline in organ trafficking cases following Mercy General protocols. The article described how law enforcement agencies around the world had used the Mercy General case as a model for identifying and investigating organ trafficking operations. The increased awareness and improved detection methods had significantly reduced the incidence of medical organ trafficking globally. Rebecca felt a deep sense of satisfaction reading the article. The nightmare she had survived had been transformed into a force for good that was saving lives around the world. That evening, Rebecca attended a memorial service for the victims of Mercy General Hospital. The service was held annually to honor the more than 3,200 people who had been murdered and to remind the medical community of the importance of ethical practice. "We gather tonight to remember those who were taken from us by people who betrayed the trust placed in medical professionals," the speaker said. "But we also gather to celebrate the courage of those who refused to remain silent, who fought back against injustice, and who transformed tragedy into hope." As Rebecca listened to the names of victims being read aloud, she thought about the lives that had been saved because of their sacrifice. Every piece of legislation passed, every trafficking network shut down, every doctor who chose ethics over profit was a tribute to those who had died. After the service, Rebecca was approached by a young medical student who introduced herself as Sarah Chen, the daughter of Dr. Michael Chen, who had been executed for his role in the organ trafficking conspiracy. "Dr. Martinez," Sarah said, "I wanted to thank you for exposing what my father did. I know it destroyed our family, but it also prevented him from hurting more people." Rebecca was moved by the young woman's words. "Sarah, your father's crimes don't define you. What matters is who you choose to become. I'm studying to become a doctor like you, someone who saves lives instead of destroying them. The Mercy General case taught me that medicine is about serving others, not serving yourself." As Rebecca drove home that night, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from an ambitious young surgeon focused on career advancement to someone whose greatest achievement was exposing a conspiracy that threatened the integrity of medicine itself. The scars from her experience at Mercy General would never fully heal. She still had nightmares about the basement facility where dozens of people were murdered every day. She still felt anger when she thought about the victims who had trusted doctors to heal them, only to be betrayed in the most horrific way possible. But those scars had also made her a better doctor and a stronger advocate for ethical medical practice. Every patient she saved, every resident she taught, every speech she gave about medical ethics was influenced by her determination to ensure that no one else would suffer what the victims of Mercy General had endured. Rebecca pulled into her driveway and sat in her car for a moment, looking at the modest home she had purchased with money earned through honest medical practice rather than criminal enterprise. It wasn't as luxurious as the accommodations Mercy General had provided, but it was built on a foundation of integrity rather than murder. Her phone buzzed with one final message of the day, from Agent Morrison: "Arrested 3 doctors in Seattle, operating trafficking ring. Used your protocols for identification. Another network shut down thanks to your courage." Rebecca smiled as she read the message. 5 years later, her decision to fight back against the Mercy General conspiracy was still saving lives. And as long as there were people willing to exploit others for profit, there would be a need for people willing to fight back. Sometimes, she reflected, the most important surgery a doctor could perform wasn't on a patient's body, it was on the corruption that threatened to destroy medicine's soul. And sometimes the best way to save lives was to risk your own to expose those who would take them. Rebecca Martinez had learned that lesson in the most terrifying way possible, but she had also learned that courage, determination, and a commitment to doing what's right could triumph over even the most sophisticated criminal conspiracy. As she walked toward her front door, Rebecca thought about tomorrow's surgery schedule, a full day of procedures on patients who needed help regardless of their ability to pay. It was exactly where she wanted to be, doing exactly what medicine was supposed to do, saving lives, healing suffering, and proving every day that some things were more important than money.